You're listening to the Clive Holland Show on Fix Radio, across the nation on DAB. And today we're looking at something very, very important in our industry and something that is close to my heart in terms of, well, from the first day I started at Fix Radio, I guess. It introduced me to the problems that we have in the construction industry. Here at Fix Radio, we're doing a lot to try and combat it in our industry, along with, of course, great charities as well. And they are really incredible, the work that they do, I have to say. Joining me in the studio is two of our great friends, Dave Finnegan from Elwood Enterprises and Liam McGinley from McGinley CC. Okay, now this is a subject we've talked about before, boys, and in fact I think we covered it, Dave, the very first time we did a show together like this. Yeah. And if we go back to something we spoke about before, about how the job can be all-consuming, right, sometimes without you realising it, and I know you've started to realise it, but how important is mental health to you guys, but also to our industry in general? We're made more aware of it now, through this radio station anyway, we're more aware of it. But how important is it to you and the people that are working around you? Is it something that you're constantly aware of?
Definitely. Through the awareness that I've seen through the likes of what Fix have done and all the stuff you see on social media now, which I think is the biggest help to a lot of people in raising awareness. It definitely made me realise that some of the things that you just got on with your day-to-day life before you knew what mental health was about, or I mean, because it's something that isn't talked about widely enough. It really isn't. And the fact that on social media and through the the radio and the media and stuff now, it is starting to get more daylight. I think it's really, really important that everyone realises that all the little things that you've got burning away in the back of your head are actually always leading towards something that could potentially cause you a problem down the line. I mean, we have horrific stats of, construction workers taking their own lives and things like that. And it's something that, until it's actually told you like that and it's put in front of you, I think the awareness of it up until even a couple of years ago wasn't there.
No, exactly. I mean, we're talking about 10 tradespeople in our industry, construction industry, a week taking their own lives, which was a shocker. How I came across this, I know I've mentioned it many times before, but this is how I came across it. Day one, Fix Radio, I'm going into the studio, I'm doing a show, and on the screen, the telephone light comes on, and I'm thinking, how do I do this? I didn't have a clue. But by the time I got somebody out of the office to come, and it was a young lad, I won't say his name now. I have said it a lot in the past, but I won't say his name now. But I said, look, when I'm off air, I'll have a chat with you, because he said my dad took his own life at the age of 52. I took over the business, because his own building business, and he said within 2 years I was feeling the same way. And I said to him, why did you get in touch with me? I didn't know anything about it. In fact, I poo-pooed it. I thought, is this a wind-up or what? Because I had, in all the time I'd been in the industry, I'd never heard of it. And that could have been just ignorance on my part. But when he started to explain, and I met him, and I met his mum, and I met his sister and stuff like that, I realised, I thought, whoa, this is bad. And, it sort of woke me up then with the Lighthouse Club. They told me what was going on, but it made me really aware and acutely aware of, maybe because we are in an industry that's very macho, right? So it's a mainly male-dominated industry. That it's like putting on a stage face where, no, I'm fine, everything's good, I'm cool, and then going home. And then I started to meet people from families that had lost loved ones from the industry, and it was a real shocker sitting down talking with them. So I think it's important that we are aware of it. But what are your experiences with it, Liam?
Well, I've come from it on both sides. I was involved heavily, as you know, with the wood butchers. We were sort of promoting stuff about the men's mental health and stuff like that. And we were talking before the show, Kath, before we come up here, Clive, that I've had people ring me and I haven't got the biggest following, but ringing me, asking me about how to handle things with business and trade, maybe because of what they've seen on social media and bits and pieces, which again we've touched on. I think that people are talking more openly about it now, that there is that network of people that people will just feel comfortable being able to approach, whether it be you as an individual hosting a radio station or Dave talking about a new router or whatever. They just get that, oh, actually, do you know what, I'll reach out to that guy. I've spoken a few times about things that have gone on, and I admit recently, you know, I had a bit of a hiccup. I had a bad turn and we got sent to hospital and bits and pieces, and it wasn't until I came out that I spoke to the missus and told her a lot of stuff that's been hidden away for the last 3 years, you know. Lost my old man, business wasn't great, workshop situations, and it was one thing after another, and all it was just tick, 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 constantly in my head. You know, you go and put your head down at night to go to sleep, and you weren't asleep, you're just staring at the ceiling because you just can't get it out of your mind.
What was your worry, Liam? What was your real worry, though, overall? I mean, first of all, did you recognise it?
I recognised it to a point, but I felt, even though that I was the one that ironically was telling people, go and talk to someone and whatever, I wasn't talking to people. You know, I didn't open up to my wife about certain things. I kind of only spoke about the things that I felt were acceptable for me to talk to someone about, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
you know,
so this was all about putting the mask on, though.
It was the mask that was being put on, you know, and, you know, things like losing my dad, I've not dealt with that properly, and I saw things that were
Take your time, mate. We're here for you. You know that. We're here for you, baby. You know, it's tough. You know, I know what it's like to lose, you know, your mum and dad, and it's a hard thing. But if you haven't come to terms with it, how do you think, Liam, you can come to terms with it? Who can help you come to terms with it? Can you reach out further? Can you just have a good cry about it? Can you? What way is going to help you? 'Cause let's draw a line today. Let's draw a line today, right? You say you haven't dealt with it, so let's help you get that across the line. So by telling me how you think you could deal with it. Do you need? Would you need an expert to chat with you, or do you just need to sit down?
That's what I've done. That's what I've done. I mean, I've done it over the last couple of weeks, and it's taken a lot to, I don't know, almost admit to have to do. Do you know? I'm very lucky that I've got a huge support network of fellow tradesmen. This is probably the first time I've actually openly had an open conversation as open about it, but I guess at the same time I'm aware that it needs to be done, you know, and I've sat on the phone to people like, you know, Dave the carpenter, Dave Cullen, and all sorts of other people, Steve the chippy.
Dave went through it himself. Dave went through an emotional time himself.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I found that's come off the back of this is it's funny, it's not until I've had conversations with people about these situations that then I found myself talking to these people, and they go, oh, actually, just to let you know, 6 months ago I was in hospital myself because I had a panic attack. And you look at this guy and you're thinking, I thought everything was sunshine and rainbows for you, do you know what I mean? But it's not then until I've had the guts to sort of openly say something to him that then he's felt it's okay to then say something to me, if you know what I mean. I've changed a lot because I've had open conversations now with my wife about things. So she now knows as well that I haven't got over losing the old fella, and the combination of what's happened there in my workshop, and you know how the money came about for me to take my business to the next stage and then lose that. It's like losing me dad again, you know, all this sort of thing. So it was all coming. It was one thing after another. But
do you find when people say time is a healer, when it comes to something like losing your parents, especially if you've had a fantastic bond with them as well, do you find that isn't quite true? That you time doesn't heal unless Liam, you can say start from today with anybody that can help, right? Get you across that line to say, do you know what, Dad? In your head, I'm talking, right? To say to yourself, do you know what, Dad? You've been brilliant. I've loved you all my life. It's tough living without you. However, be with me. We've got to move on. You know, we've got to move on. Is that just too A to B? Or is it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think everyone is different. You know, like I had a huge bond with my granddad and my dad's dad, and I still have today the tools that he showed me and helped me use as a kid. I've got a very kind of famous photo on my thing with my first handsaw on top of an old horse bench and that, and I've still got that tenon saw today. But that, all these years, like that's 30 odd years later, but like I associate everything that I do today to woodwork being something that I kind of learned from my granddad, and my dad being the person that drove me to and fro from college, you know, picked me up when I didn't drive, to put my tools in a car to take me to a private job to do that work, you know, all this thing. So it's you, little things will give you that trigger,
yeah,
and then it will just send you off the edge. Obviously, you know, losing my dad was only 3 years ago, so it's still it's fresh, yeah. You know.
But do you think you're on the right track to sort of going, I'm dealing with it. I will deal with it, I promise.
I am now, because I've had a lot more open conversations with my family, with my kids as well. You know, coming home, Dave touched on it earlier when we were talking in the cafe, coming home and just switching, just screaming at the kids, you know, because I've had a bad day, but not just because I've had a bad day, because I've got all this other stuff working around in my head, and I just need a bit of peace. So, you know,
don't understand that, though. You get it.
No,
right?
Yeah, they don't understand it. But then, because I've had an open conversation with them, and I've had that open conversation because, you know, I got myself to a point where I got myself so worked up and was working silly hours, I ended up in hospital, you know, and the kids are like, what's going on? So it was at that point then I had to be completely honest with them and say, look, this is what's going on, you know. But then I'm trying to be a successful businessman, and I'm trying to be a dad at the same time. I'm trying to be that role model, so that, like you said, that stigma of you can't go home and be crying in front of your kids, or you've got to...
See, to me, that's balls, because I think now, in the 21st century, right, we've got to be honest, you know. We've got to be honest with ourselves. And if that means tears, that's absolutely fine. I don't... For me personally, listen, I've sat with people that have really struggled, and they've shed tears. And, you know, when I did a TV programme and they got ripped off, and I sat there and I watched their floods of tears, it's almost therapeutic for them to release, you know. And I think that is very important, that you don't block that up and go, no, you know, I'm a bloke. Forget that. We're in the 21st century. It's time now to take that mask off. And if that means that you sit down with another bloke even and shed a tear or two, I'm all for that.
But it takes time, and it's
changing mindset.
It's changing mindset.
It's getting away from the toxic masculinity of being okay all the time and saying that you're on top of things when you're not. I mean, if you walk down here and you banged your leg and it really hurt, did it hurt? No.
Yeah.
Because that's the way our minds are working. It's okay for you to not be all right about your old man passing. It's okay for you to be upset about it. It's okay for you to think about it and to dwell on it. And if you buried yourself in work because that was how you dealt with it at the time, then that's okay, so long as you're then communicating that with your wife. If you're going home and saying to her, listen, my head's not right, I'm just going to keep my head down and keep working and I'll be all right in a bit. And if I'm not, I'll say to you, it's okay. And I think the communication side of things is what's got to change. And I think because we are now talking about it more and we are making this message much more widespread and saying to people, get out and talk to it. There's loads of good people that want to help. I had it myself and it came through social media. Someone reached out to me when they saw that I was struggling, right? And I never knew I was.
So how did they see that? Because, you guys ooze all this sort of confidence on the outside, but like everybody else, we've got our struggles, and there are times when you just need somebody to go, okay, I'm not accepting that you're okay, spill the beans.
Yeah, well, this is exactly it. So I put myself on Instagram every day and I turn up and I play my part and I tell everyone what I'm doing the day, and it's day in, day out. And I was swamped by work, and it was during COVID and things like that, and basically half the lads that were working for me went down with COVID and I couldn't get jobs finished, and customers were going at me, and they weren't understanding because they're not. They don't care.
No.
They only care about their project. They don't care about what else is going on in your life. And if you think that they do, then you're fooling yourself, because everyone's got that element of selfishness.
Yeah, and touching on that, with everything that just happened to me over the last 4 weeks with workshop and this, that and the other, like I say, ending up in the hospital because of it. That's one of the biggest changes that's come of it. Was before I used to I wouldn't be upfront with customers about that. Some people have said to me over the last few weeks, why in God's name have you told a customer that? I even put it on my stories the other day. But I was like, look, I've got myself to a point here where these things have all been completely out of my control, but they've stressed me out to the point where other things have then mounted on top of each other, on top of each other, on top of each other to make me ill. I need to be open with everyone and just say that, because otherwise I'm just putting I'm just putting a mask on it again.
Yes.
And now all my customers are going to be like, why aren't you here this week? Well, I'm not here this week because last week I was in hospital and I had to have 2 days off. So this is why, I need to manage my time. And by you allowing me to do that and giving me some breathing room, it gives my head a bit of space as well, because I'm not thinking, right, I'm being chased. But again, talking to other people about trying to manage that and being open with my customers as well about it, just as a situation of business that things have gone wrong, has helped.
That's the important thing. That they're actually talking about it, and I think this is the thing we were saying before, when my question was going to be what can and should actually be done about it. But I think, as you've pointed out as well, Dave, that talking about it is so important. But we're not all the same. Liam mentioned this before. We're not all the same. We're not all cut from the same cloth, which is a good thing. But do you think that it's generally now easier for a macho construction industry worker to actually talk about it now?
Definitely easier. It's easier because there's people spreading the right message, and there is some brilliant people doing that. And even to the point where I'll get messages off people I don't know, and they'll message you to say, like, if you've had a bad week or whatever, or you look tired, make sure you get some time off this weekend. And I think that sort of people are much more inclined to reach out now. And I think as men, we're much more inclined to accept that everyone's going through it, because up until a couple of years ago, it wasn't talked about, and you didn't think that you could say that you weren't okay. When now, I've done several things, mental health podcasts and worked with a couple of charities and done things where all I've done is I've gone and explained my situation, and I'd never think that I'm putting myself out there saying, I'm a mental health advocate, or, I was suffering with this and this. Because I was just suffering with the general day-to-day stresses of running a business. You know,
Without realising it, though.
without realising it and without putting a label on it or this, that and the other. And you think that you have to have a diagnosis or to be able to put yourself in a bracket of, you know, depression or whatever to qualify to being, you know, a victim of your own mental health. And you don't. You can actually just be having a bad day and you need a bit of time, or you just need a shoulder to cry on, or someone to say to me, you know, that was yesterday, tomorrow will be better.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that side of things, I think social media is a huge thing for that. It really is. That's how I initially got introduced to my own problems. So someone who runs a mental health charity watched me on my morning stories, and I was just talking about how stressed I was because the lads got COVID and I couldn't finish a job off. And he sent me his number and he went, give me a ring. And I rung him up and I told him, and he said to me, what's the matter? And this is a bloke I think I'd met him once and spoke to him briefly. And this is Rob from the MYH podcast.
Yes, yeah.
And he's an absolute brilliant man, and he's a champion of our industry, and he's doing great things. And he does things like that. He'll watch your story in the morning, and then he'll message you to see if you're all right. And he'll tell you
Rob
that
actually, over the last 5 or 6 weeks, has been an absolute godsend to me. Like, he has done exactly what Dave is saying. Like, he knew what had happened, got in touch. We had a phone call, 20, 30 minutes on the phone. There was no illusion of sort of, right, look, I'm giving you a call, I need to shoot off. Like, I could have sat on the phone to him for an hour, but he knew that something wasn't right. And he went out of his way to get in contact, and he still does. He just touches base every now and again, just how's things going. You know, he got the new workshop up and running, all this sort of stuff. Like, he's like, you know, whatever.
he really cares, and it's because of his own experiences. And what he's done is he's built himself into a position now where he wants to lead a charge for men and construction workers, talking about their mental health, explaining to everyone that it's all right not to be 100% all the time.
Exactly.
And the only way that we're going to deal with this is putting it out there on the table and talking about it.
Yeah, and people need to see people like you guys as well. And they'll think, well, if Dave and Liam can do it, I can do it. I can talk about it. You know, and I think that is the most important thing. Because I was going to ask the question, do you think government should be doing more? But you know what? I could ask that question about government in so many different sectors of our industry and in general life. And I think I know what the answer is, and I'm not even going to ask you the question to answer it in the first place. But as a collective in our industry, and with the brilliance of you guys and people like Rob and everybody else, the Lighthouse Club and so on, only that way are we ever going to get down to the core. And it's not going to happen overnight. It certainly isn't going to happen overnight. We can see that already. But, you know, eventually...
someone said to me the other week, change doesn't happen without change.
Yeah.
How simple is that? And it's not until you can't find out what help is available, whether that's financial help, you could be struggling with debts or anything. There is endless amounts of different people to contact, and even people like the Lighthouse Club or Rob or even the likes of Fix Radio. I'm sure you've got the contact details as well, but it's not until you reach out to these people and can talk about it. They might not be able to help you directly, but they'll be able to point you in the right direction of something else.
And I think that's, you know, the fact that it's there, that crutch is there, if you like, a hop up for you, is really important. Boys, brilliant. Thank you so much.